All right, welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some really fascinating stuff today. Large language models.
Yeah.
LLMs, for short.
Yeah, LLMs.
I mean, think about it. They're everywhere now, right?
They are.
Generating content, like, you know, marketing copy or scripts even.
Mm-hmm.
Answering customer questions. Analyzing huge data sets. Helping developers write code.
It's a pretty crazy shift, isn't it?
It is. It really feels like things are changing quickly.
Yeah, the pace of development is really something. And what's interesting right now is the sheer variety of options out there. You've got these really powerful commercial models, and then you have these open source projects that are getting better all the time.
And that's kind of the crux of what we want to explore today, right? Because it's exciting to have so many choices, but it can also be totally overwhelming.
Exactly. How do you even begin to figure out which LLM is the right fit for you with so many out there, all promising the world?
So that's our mission today. We're going to break it down, give you a framework, some concrete criteria to help you navigate this whole LLM landscape. And where we are now, in April 2025, it's more important than ever to have a solid roadmap.
And the most important thing to remember, the core idea, is that there isn't one best LLM for everyone. It's all about finding the right fit for your specific needs, your resources, your limitations.
Right. So let's start with what might seem obvious, but it's often overlooked. Really taking the time to define your needs and objectives. Like, what are you actually trying to achieve with an LLM?
That's the first question, yeah. What's the main task?
It's like building a house, right? You wouldn't just start laying bricks without a blueprint.
Exactly. So are you thinking about using an LLM to, say, write really engaging marketing copy or maybe scripts for social media? Or is translation your main thing? Do you work with a lot of different languages?
Yeah, lots of people are.
Or maybe you need help summarizing these huge, complicated documents that everybody seems to have to deal with these days.
Or maybe you're looking for something that can answer complex questions based on a ton of data, like a really smart research assistant.
Yeah, there's that. Or even things like analyzing code for errors or pulling out specific information from all this unstructured data that's out there. The more clearly you can define what you need the LLM to do, the better choices you'll make.
Okay, so once you know what you want the LLM to do, the next step is to figure out, okay, how will I know if it's actually doing a good job? What are the metrics for success?
Right, you need a way to measure.
So if you're dealing with facts and figures, maybe accuracy is the most important thing. But if you're generating creative content, maybe it's more about originality and style. Or maybe you need the LLM to sound really natural, like a human wrote it. Or you need responses super fast, like in a chatbot scenario. You also might need it to follow really complex multi-step instructions. So defining those metrics is crucial.
Yeah, it's like your yardstick.
Exactly. Now think about scale, too. How much are you planning to use this LLM? Are you just going to be asking it a few questions here and there, or will it be handling thousands or even millions of interactions every day?
That's a big factor, especially when you start thinking about cost, which we'll get into in a minute.
And speaking of cost, that's obviously a huge consideration, right? How much can you realistically spend?
Yeah, budgets are always a thing.
So are you able to use a paid API or sign up for a monthly subscription for one of those commercial LLM services? Or are you looking for a more budget-friendly approach, which might mean looking into open source models?
Right. And remember, even with open source, while the software itself might be free, you might have to pay for the infrastructure to run it. You're going to need some serious computing power for these things.
And then there's the issue of speed or latency, which can be crucial depending on what you're doing. How fast do you need those responses to be?
Yeah, that's a trade-off. You might want the most powerful LLM, but it might be slower.
Like if you're building a chatbot for customer service, those responses have to be pretty much instant.
Right. You don't want people waiting around.
But if you're generating, say, a long report, maybe a few seconds of processing time is fine.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about something that's becoming more and more important: data privacy and security. How sensitive is the data you'll be working with?
That's a big one, especially these days.
Are there any regulations about where that data can be processed? Maybe it needs to stay within a certain country or region. Some organizations might even need an on-premise solution where the data never leaves their own servers.
Right, complete control.
And on a related note, think about your team's technical expertise.
Yeah, what are you comfortable with?
Do you need something that's really easy to use, like a plug-and-play API?
That's the easiest way to get started for sure.
Or do you have people who can handle the more technical aspects of setting up, running, and maybe even customizing an open source model?
If you have the expertise, open source can be really powerful.
One last thing to consider, especially if you're on the cutting edge, is whether you need what's called multimodal capabilities.
Right. This is getting interesting now.
Does your LLM need to understand or generate not just text, but also things like images, audio, or even video?
Not all LLMs can do that, so that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Okay, so now you have a good sense of what you need, what you're looking for. So let's start exploring the actual LLMs that are out there.
Yeah.
Broadly speaking, you've got two main categories: commercial models, usually accessed through an API, and open source models.
Right. So on the commercial side, you've got the big players like OpenAI with their GPT series.
Yeah, everyone's heard of GPT by now.
GPT-4 Turbo is their latest and greatest. And then there's GPT 3.5 Turbo, which is still really popular. They're known for being strong all-around performers, good at complex reasoning, and following instructions well.
And then there's Google, right, with their Gemini models.
Yep, Gemini Ultra Pro and Flash.
Powerful stuff.
Really powerful, and they're designed to handle different kinds of data, not just text. And of course, if your company is already deep into the Google ecosystem, they integrate seamlessly with all of that. Gemini 1.5 Pro, their most recent, has a ridiculously large context window, which we'll talk about more later.
And we can't forget Anthropic with their Claude models.
Claude 3 Opus, Sonnet, and Haiku.
They're known for their large context windows too, right?
Yep, and they're big on safety and reliability. Claude 3 Opus is their top-of-the-line model, and Haiku is designed to be really fast and cost-effective.
And there are other players in the commercial space too, right?
Yeah, there are. You've got Cohere, which focuses a lot on enterprise solutions, and AI21 Labs, which has some interesting offerings. They might have features or pricing that makes them a good fit for certain situations.
So let's shift gears and talk about open source models. Meta's LLaMA models have been making a lot of noise lately, especially with LLaMA 3 coming out.
And LLaMA 2 before that.
They really punch above their weight in terms of performance. And there's a huge community of developers and researchers working with them, creating all these specialized versions.
It's a really active community, always pushing things forward.
And then there's Mistral AI with their Mistral large and small models, and Mistral, which uses this mixture of experts approach.
Think of it like having a team of specialized AIs working together makes the model really efficient.
They've gotten really good results, even comparable to some of the commercial models. And they offer both an API and open source versions of their models, so you've got some flexibility there.
Options are always good.
And of course, the open source world is much bigger than just LLaMA and Mistral. You've got models like Falcon and Phi 2, and platforms like Hugging Face, which is an amazing resource for finding and exploring all these open source LLMs.
It's like a library for LLMs.
Exactly. Now, here's a key point to keep in mind. When you're choosing between a commercial and an open source model, there are some fundamental trade-offs.
Right, you have to weigh the pros and cons.
Commercial models are usually super easy to use. You just plug into their API and you're off and running. But you'll be paying for that convenience, and you might have less control over your data.
With open source, you have more control, and you can potentially save money in the long run. But it's more work to set up and manage.
Okay, so now you've got a sense of the different types of LLMs out there. Let's talk about how to actually evaluate them in more detail.
Yeah, how do you know if an LLM is really good?
We're going to go through some specific criteria and, most importantly, how well those LLMs perform on the actual tasks you need them for.
Let's start with general performance, or as they say in Spanish, rendimiento general.
We're getting fancy now.
Well, it's a global podcast, right? So, rendimiento general has a few key aspects. First, there's the quality of the output. Is the text it generates fluent? Does it make sense? Is the grammar good? Is it creative if it needs to be?
Makes sense.
Then there's comprehension and reasoning. Can the LLM actually understand complicated questions or problems and figure things out logically?
Like, it's not just repeating what it's been trained on. It can actually think.
Right. Then there's instruction following. How well does it do what you tell it to do, especially if it's a complex, multi-step instruction?
Important if you're trying to automate tasks.
And finally, for a lot of applications, factual accuracy is crucial. This is where things get tricky, because LLMs can sometimes just make stuff up, and they do it so confidently that you might not even realize it's wrong.
Like that whole hallucination.
Right, hallucination. If you're working with up-to-date information, you might want to look for models that can access and process information from the web. Otherwise, always double-check those facts, especially if it's really important.
So good general performance is important, But then you have to think about how well a model is suited for specific tasks, because an LLM that's great at writing stories might not be the best choice for generating code, right?
Exactly. They have their strengths and weaknesses.
So for things like creative writing and marketing, models like GPT-4, Claude 3 Opus, even Llama 3 are known for being pretty good at generating fluent creative text.
Yeah, they can really come up with some interesting stuff.
Now, if you're focused on generating code, then models like GPT-4, Claude 3, and some that are specifically designed for code are going to be better. They understand programming concepts, syntax, all that stuff.
It's like they've been to coding boot camp.
Now, for tasks like summarizing long documents or doing in-depth analysis, the size of the context window becomes really important.
Right. The context window is how much information the model can keep in mind at once.
It's like short-term memory.
So a bigger context window means you can feed it a whole research paper or a huge transcript, and it can actually process it all, make connections. Gemini 1.5 Pro is a good example. It has a massive context window. Claude 3, both Opus and Sonnet, are also good in this area.
So we're not just talking about single questions and answers anymore. We're talking about analyzing entire documents.
Exactly. It's a whole different level of capability.
Now, for chatbots and virtual assistants, you're usually looking for a good balance between quality, speed, and cost.
Right. You want it to be smart, fast, and affordable.
So models like GPT 3.5 Turbo, Claude 3 Haiku, Gemini Flash, or Mistral Small or Medium are good starting points. And remember, you can customize these with fine-tuning to give them a specific personality or add specialized knowledge.
Make them sound like your brand.
Exactly. For translation, a lot of the bigger LLMs are pretty good at handling multiple languages. But if you have specific language pairs that are crucial for your work, it's always a good idea to test them out and see how they perform, because some might be better than others for specific languages.
Yeah, don't just assume they're all the same.
And for tasks like extracting information from documents or doing data analysis, accuracy and consistency are key.
You need to be able to trust the output.
And fine-tuning can be really helpful here too, to teach the LLM exactly what information you need and how you want it formatted.
So it can give you what you need right out of the box.
Now let's talk about the big one, cost.
Everybody's favorite topic.
For API models, you're usually paying by the token.
Tokens are like little pieces of words.
The more tokens the LLM has to process, the more it costs. Some providers also offer monthly subscriptions, which might be a better deal if you're using it a lot.
Volume discounts.
And those really powerful premium models like GPT-4, Claude 3 Opus, Gemini Ultra, they're going to cost more per token than the mid-tier or lower-tier options like GPT 3.5, Claude 3 Haiku, Gemini Flash, or Mistral Small or Medium.
You get what you pay for.
And with open source models, remember that you might have to pay for the hardware, those powerful GPUs, to run the models effectively.
Yeah.
Plus setup costs, maintenance, maybe even hiring people to manage it all.
It's not always as free as it seems.
Now, speed or latency is another important factor. This is crucial for anything that needs real-time interaction, like chatbots.
Right. You don't want to keep people waiting.
Generally, the smaller, more streamlined models, or ones that are specifically optimized for speed, like Claude 3 Haiku, Gemini Flash, and there are these new hardware systems like Grok that are really good at running LLaMA and Mistral. They're going to give you faster responses.
Speed demons.
So we talked about the context window earlier, which is how much text the model can process at once. This is important for tasks that involve long documents, conversation histories, or anything that requires the model to remember a lot of information.
It's all about capacity.
And then there's ease of integration and use.
How easy is it to actually use the LLM?
So if you're looking at a commercial API, check if they have good documentation and software development kits, SDKs, essentially toolkits for developers, in the programming languages that your team uses. If you're thinking about open source, how easy is it to set up and integrate those models into your systems? Is there a good community to help you out?
Community support can be a lifesaver with open source.
And then there's customization, which is often done through fine-tuning.
Fine-tuning is like giving the LLM some extra training, teaching it something specific.
So with commercial models, does the provider allow you to fine-tune their model on your own data? This can really boost performance for specific tasks or give it a certain tone or style. And with open source models, is fine-tuning something your team can handle?
It depends on your expertise and resources.
And don't forget about privacy and security, which we talked about earlier.
Always a concern.
Make sure you understand where your data is being processed and what the provider's policies are. If you need really tight control, self-hosting an open source model might be the best option.
Gives you peace of mind.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, understanding your needs, evaluating models based on different criteria. But theory and benchmarks only take you so far. The next step is actually testing and comparing these LLMs.
Right. You have to see how they perform in the real world.
So you need to create a set of prompts, like instructions, that are representative of how you'll actually be using the LLM.
Use real-world examples.
And then take your top contenders, run those same prompts through each model, and see how they do.
Side-by-side comparison.
And this is where those success metrics you defined earlier come in. You need to judge the responses based on what's most important to you. Is the writing creative? Is the code working properly? Is the summary accurate and concise?
Judge them based on your own criteria.
And if you're building something that people will be using, you could even do A/B testing with real users to see which LLM they prefer.
Real-world feedback is invaluable.
And a word of caution here. Don't just blindly trust those benchmark scores that you see online or in articles.
They can be misleading.
They give you a general idea of how a model performs, but they might not be accurate for your specific task or industry. Resources like the Chatbot Arena can give you some insights into general user preferences, but your own testing is always going to be the most reliable.
Trust your own results.
Now, as you're getting close to making a decision, think about the bigger picture, the ecosystem, the future. How well does the LLM you're considering integrate with the other tools and platforms you're already using?
You don't want to create a bunch of silos.
And if you're going with a commercial API, think about vendor lock-in. How easy would it be to switch to another provider later on if you need to?
Flexibility is important.
And remember, this field is changing so fast. Make sure the model or the provider you choose is committed to staying ahead of the curve, doing research, constantly improving.
You don't want to get stuck with something that's outdated in a year.
So to wrap it all up, remember, choosing the right LLM is not about finding the absolute best one, because there isn't one. It's about finding the best fit for your specific situation, your goals, your limitations.
It's a journey, not a destination.
You need to really understand your needs, what you're trying to achieve. Then do your research, explore the commercial and open source options.
See what's out there.
And then evaluate those options based on the criteria that matter most to you, like performance, cost, speed, context window, ease of use, security, and don't forget to actually test them out with real-world examples.
Get your hands dirty.
The LLM that's right for you will be the one that strikes the right balance between capabilities, cost, and how easy it is to use so you can actually achieve what you're setting out to do.
Make it work for you.
And one final thought. With these models evolving so quickly, who knows what amazing new applications will be possible even in the next few months or a year.
The possibilities are endless.
So be prepared to reevaluate your choices as things change. And don't be afraid to experiment and see what works best for you.
Stay curious, stay open-minded, and have fun with it.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See you then.